All right, they did it. The Houston Texans got their guy, and they got the Cody Stoots top choice on the market. Man, Nick Caley going to be the next offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero, the first to report it. He is the Rams tight ends coach and pass game coordinator and has been under Sean McVay for the past 2 seasons. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago to the day, Nick Caley interviewed for the Houston Texans offensive coordinator position that ultimately went to Bobby Slowick. They ended up going with Bobby Slowick. 2 years later, Nick Caley gets the job. Now, what has Nick Caley been up to in his career? What type of coach is he? What type of coaches could he be bringing along with him from the Rams? We'll get into all of it while we're here live on YouTube. So let's start off with Nick Caley. He was my top choice. Why was he my top choice? Well, I want to pick off the Sean McVay tree. The Sean McVay tree is where you want to be picking coaches from. You look at Kevin O'Connell, who's successful in Minnesota as a head coach. He was under Sean McVay, didn't call plays. You look at Zach Taylor. He's successful in Cincinnati. He was under Sean McVay, didn't call plays when he was there. You look at Liam Cohen, his time in the Rams system, bouncing around with Kentucky as well, and then ultimately calling plays for the Buccaneers, now a head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Very good as a play caller for the Buccaneers, did an excellent job at college as well in his couple of stints there. He's from the McVay tree. Matt LaFleur goes to Tennessee. He's an OC for 1 year, then he's a head coach for the Green Bay Packers. So, lots to like about the McVay tree. Now, specifically about Nick Caley, I like his background. I like coaches who have had to coach a tough position to coach and have had to go through some extra that other position coaches don't have to go through, and that's typically your tight ends coaches. Tight ends coaches got to know the run game. They got to know run blocking. They got to know the pass game. They got to know pass blocking. They got to teach receiving. They've got to do it all. So you get a good and well-experienced guy at coaching a bunch of different types of pieces of the offense and coaching a very tough position to coach as well in the tight end position. And last year, Nick Caley was probably ready to be an offensive coordinator. The New England Patriots checked in on him. The New England Patriots wanted to see if he would be their offensive coordinator. Albert Breer reports they offered him up to $3 million to be the offensive coordinator, and ultimately Nick Caley turned down the offensive coordinator job with the New England Patriots, stuck around with Sean McVay for 1 more year to learn under the McVay tree. So he gets a little bit more Sean McVay seasoning. The interview 2 years later, he gets to showcase everything that he's learned from the Sean McVay seasoning and being under Sean McVay in LA. I know a lot of people who cover the league, specifically for The Athletic, have talked about he's kind of McVay-esque in his excitement and the way he talks about football and his energy. You certainly like that about him. And another huge element that I really like about Nick Caley is he's going to be able to draw out some of the stuff from the Shanahan style of offense that the Texans ran, and he's going to be able to draw that out and make that more successful than it was. Certainly the hope and the desire when you hire a guy like Caley, because the McVay tree is an offshoot from the Shanahan tree. So hopefully he'll be able to take the Shanahan stuff that does work and make it even better, keep it, make it even better. And then he'll bring over what I'm assuming is a pretty significant change in the way that they operate. But then you really get to thinking about how this marries with CJ Stroud and what he brings to the table and what Stroud maybe brings to the table for Nick Caley. And Stroud frequently talks about the different offenses that he watches, sometimes in the offseason or when maybe the Texans play on Thursday and then he gets a weekend to go through some of the offenses. And he talks about how he really likes to watch Minnesota, which is a former Sean McVay disciple. And he talks about how he really likes to watch the Rams and how much of an underrated quarterback Matt Stafford is. So CJ Stroud has paid attention to this style of offense for a few years now. CJ Stroud likes this style of offense, and Nick Caley is going to hopefully bring over a Sean McVay style with with motion to confuse defenses, open guys up, and a solid run game and a commitment to the run game. Another thing I really like about McVay guys is when it's working, they'll just run the football. McVay does it as good as just about anybody. Like if Kyron Williams is getting going for the Rams, he's not out there trying to force the ball to Puka Nacua or force the ball to Cooper Kupp. They just stay on the ground. And they keep things rolling as well. So very intrigued to see what the ultimate staff is going to look like. If Caley wants to have a completely new staff, he should be afforded that opportunity. I'm sure that's something that came up in the conversation, interviewing him and talking to him about, hey, what do you want? What do you need from a staff perspective? That's something that I'm sure was hammered out when they were talking about him potentially taking the job. So if he wants a brand new staff, he should be afforded that opportunity. One of the pieces of his staff could be a very significant one. Now, obviously, if something breaks live on social media, let me know. I'll pop over there, take a little gander at it, take a little look at it, because I'm worried about what we got going on here in the YouTube stream, the chat. We'll get to your questions, comments, joys, and concerns as well. Let's get to some of these super chats. Super chats go to the front of the line. Ricardo Loza. What's good, Stoots? Feeling like 2-3 seed is a lock. And Ricardo's already, before they fix the offensive line, before they go out there and get some more weapons, before we figure out if there's going to be some sort of growing pains with Nick Caley, Ricardo's like, lock it in, 2 or 3 seed. Let's go. I like it. I like the confidence. Look, this is a coordinator hire that should inspire some confidence about the upcoming season. Sure, I understand people are worried about his lack of play calling experience. Everybody had no play calling experience before they called plays, and McVay does such a good job empowering his staff and creating a good example, and having him coached under Josh McDaniels as well. You can observe and learn, and yes, there's going to be growing pains. There would be growing pains trying to get any of these guys adjusted to a play caller who's had experience. Most of the time, if you're a play caller and you got experience and you're available, you got fired at your most recent job. And look, Nick Caley, if it doesn't work out, they look for another one in a couple of years. That's just the way offensive coordinators work in the NFL. But this was a calculated move by D'Amico Ryans and company to go out there, pick off of a successful tree. Now, you're not picking the newest fruit. It's been picked on a little bit, but that McVay tree feels like it's got more left to it than that Shanahan tree that feels like it's been picked over. And that's where ultimately the Texans ended up with Bobby Slowick. Again, I really like that he's coached under multiple different coaches. Ricardo's pumped. He's already putting the 2 seed or the 3 seed in there. Dime says, era, good vibes. Now let's go get home field advantage. Yeah, look, part of a new offensive coordinator hire is making sure that offense plays better. And if it plays better, that defense is fantastic again this year, then you're going to get an opportunity to be one of the AFC elites. But that offense has a long road to go. They've got a long journey. They were not a good offense this year. So there's a lot of work to do for Nick Caley and company. Zach Rose says, you think he'll stay for more than a year? I hope we have to have that conversation. I hope that is something that is necessary for us to be talking about, because if we are talking about him potentially leaving after a year, that means the offense is excellent, not worth picking off of. Like, that's what it means. And if you want to be in a Tampa Bay situation where, hey, the offense is so damn good you lose your OC, like, that's fine. If the Texans have that, they might be playing for an AFC championship, because if they had an offensive coordinator worth hiring away in 2024, they're probably playing in an AFC championship and maybe still playing. We're talking about this from New Orleans. So, Zach, appreciate the super chat. Marky Mark says, I still have the old era Good Vibes stickers. Time for a new era Good Vibes stickers, Cody. I will put that on the to-do list for you, Marky Mark. I know a lot of folks been asking for the era Good Vibes. Had a little hiccup there with Bobby Slowick, but we will get the era stickers put together and get them updated with the new Texans colors as well. So Marky Mark, appreciate you for the super chat. BG hits that super chat. Let's try to hit that 10,000 subs during this live. Let's freaking go. Appreciate you, BG. Appreciate you for the support and the many super chats, the comments, both on the live videos and the recorded videos. Thank you. All right, let's talk about some of the extra around Nick Caley. A big positive for Nick Caley, a big extra element to his candidacy that is really important. And Daryl Freer brings it up, or Daryl or Darrell, I can't tell which one, forgive me. You think he can lure Zach Cromer to come over. Now, you're asking yourself, who the hell is Zach Cromer? Zach Cromer is the assistant offensive line coach for the Los Angeles Rams. He has been the assistant O-line coach for 8 years, previously coaching under his father, Aaron Cromer, who was the offensive line coach when the Rams won the Super Bowl. Aaron Cromer is now the O-line coach for the Buffalo Bills. Zach Cromer has been the assistant offensive line coach for the Rams for a few years now, almost a decade, actually. So Cromer, if he could come over with Nick Caley, that's another big boost, because you have to imagine when he's the son of a legendary offensive line coach, when he's been with the Rams for 8 years, he's got an in-depth understanding of that offense, and the Rams have not spent a lot of top-end capital on their offensive line. Yes, I know at one time they had Andrew Whitworth at left tackle, but they have not spent, I believe it's a top 2-round draft pick. They've spent one top 2-round draft pick on their offensive line in the past 4 or 5 seasons. So they've had to get those guys in the building. They've had to coach those guys up, and they've had to make the most out of them. Here's the stat here. Top 100 picks spent on the offensive line the last 5 drafts. The Rams have spent one top 100 pick on their offensive line in the last 5 drafts. So they've had those guys in there, and they've been coaching those guys up, and Cromer has been a part of that. Zach Cromer, the assistant offensive line coach for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, Cromer interviewed for the Jaguars offensive line coach job over the weekend. Zach Cromer interviewed for the Jaguars offensive line coach over the weekend. Of course, he knows Liam Cohen, who is the head coach of the Jaguars. He knows Liam Cohen from their time in LA together when Cohen had a couple of stops there with Sean McVay. So the fact that Cromer didn't get that job yet, he's interviewed for it, okay? The fact that Cromer didn't get that job just yet leads me to believe that he was maybe waiting for the opportunity to maybe come his way if Nick Caley got an offensive coordinator job, which, of course, he indeed. Now, obviously, the Texans have had rumors, and Aaron Wilson's been on top of this. The Texans have had rumors about keeping their assistant offensive line coach, Cole Popovich. Cole Popovich was a coaching assistant, a co-offensive line coach, an assistant running backs coach. This past year, he was the assistant, or past 2 seasons, was the assistant offensive line coach for the Texans. So he knows Nick Caley from back in the day. They would have crossed paths working with the offensive line coach, obviously, with the blocking scheme at the tight end position. So you would have thought that those two would have crossed paths. Cole Popovich, obviously a part of a disappointing offensive line performance last season from the Texans. But if Caley is going to keep some continuity, maybe, hey, Cole Popovich wasn't the guy. It was Chris Strausser. Now Popovich with the job's going to do better. I don't love that. I'd rather Cromer come over, have the extensive McVay experience, and bring him over. But Caley knows the guy, and relationships are huge in coaching. Part of the relationship that got Caley involved in this is having been under Nick Caserio when Caserio was in New England. Part of the relationship that was built 2 years ago when he interviewed. Relationships, having a knowledge of those guys and who has been your mentor, who's been your teacher, those are all important elements. So I'd prefer Zach Cromer. the assistant offensive line coach from the Rams. I'd prefer Zach Cromer to be the offensive line coach for the Texans. I also wonder as well, what does this mean for Gerard Johnson? Is Gerard Johnson going to stick around on the staff as the quarterback's coach? Is he going to stick around on the staff as pass game coordinator, quarterback's coach / pass game coordinator? Gerard Johnson has a good relationship with CJ Stroud. That was part of his inherent candidacy for the job, was familiarity with Stroud, and gets along really well with CJ Stroud. So is Gerard Johnson going to stick around on this team as, like I said, the pass game coordinator, quarterback's coach? Does Gerard Johnson even want to stick around on this team? That's something as well. Again, if Nick Caley wants to bring in a whole new staff, Nick Caley should be afforded that opportunity. So if he doesn't want to keep Gerard Johnson, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. So I will be very interested to see what this staff looks like. Will there be a rating of the McVay staff? Will there be a rating of other McVay staffs? You mentioned, if you remember, the Texans interviewed Grant Yadinsky, who is an assistant quarterback's coach and assistant pass game coordinator in the Minnesota Vikings organization. Could he get a promotion, maybe be the pass game coordinator here in Houston, because it's a McVay offshoot under Kevin O'Connell? And maybe that's part of the reason he got an offensive coordinator interview from the Houston Texans. Pick his brain. Hey, would you be interested in being on the staff? So putting together an intriguing staff is going to be important for Nick Caley. And having an old guy in the room is probably something that could be useful as well. So having an old guy in the room that has been around the block a little bit, has a little bit of experience, has called plays before, that could be a useful element. Not a requirement by any means, but could be a useful element. Matthew Green says, who do you like for run game coordinator? I mean, look, you think about somebody who's coached down in the trenches, and you could add that title to Cromer if you wanted. If you felt like you wanted to keep Cole Popovich, maybe you make him the run game coordinator, bring over Cromer as the offensive line coach, and you get to keep both the guys that you previously worked with if you're Nick Caley. So I did a big offensive coordinator breakdown. I'd be lying to you if I have a huge list of run game guys outside of the initial ones that make sense with each other, or with the familiarity with the two. Although, as we talk about this, I'm going to pull up the offensive coordinator list and see if maybe some of these guys from the bottom of the list could end up being on the coaching staff if they get let go at another place, or could they get a promotion. A quick scan, I don't really see anything, so have to effort a little bit more for this, Matthew, but appreciate the super chat. So Dominique McAdams says, you called it, we got him. Look, Caley was my top guy. That was the guy that I preferred the Texans to go after, and I like the coaching background. I like the familiarity. I like the teachers that he's had for the offense. And I like the fact that CJ Stroud likes this style of offense, likes this type of offense, and likes this brand of McVay-styled offense. So Steven says, Cody Stoots for O-line coach. I'd be terrible. They would not listen to me. I wouldn't know what to do. And then Ruderix says, Cody would be a better lineman. You're right about that. I am a great big fat person. Here's the funny story. Nosh says Stoots at right guard. Give it a little, chop the feet, get the hands up, Here's the funny part. As they hire Nick Caley, I'm sitting in the sauna at the gym. And I rushed over here to get this thing fired up and to get this thing started. So as they hired Nick Caley, I was like, got to get in here, got to see what's going on, and get this thing fired up. So I was in the sauna at the gym after a workout, not just sitting in the sauna doing the fat guy trick where it looks like you worked out hard because you sweat. Okay. And then I rushed over here to get the live stream started. So Nick Caley, the offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans, Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport first on it. And let's see if any of these other, so there's some other coaching things popping up, like coming down, like Rappaport's tweeting out some other coaching things, making sure no potential Caley candidate for his staff ends up finding himself getting hired somewhere. Okay, so Rappaport's tweeting out stuff that like assistant secondary guys, stuff like that. So, all right, so new play caller. What do you guys think? Let it fire away in the chat. Trez Ortiz says, hell yes, Stoots, get after it. Well, I figure if I'm going to talk about Texans for the next 40 years, I better live for the next 40 years, so better quit being a great big fat person and get in shape. El Mario likes the hire. What style of offense is he bringing? I mean, you got to look at what McVay was able to accomplish, what he does, willing to pass, 3 wide receivers, running if it's working. I think it's going to be some sort of offshoot. The biggest thing about hiring somebody who's coached somewhere else, who have some sort of experience, is you can't just take the playbook, put it on the copy machine, and bring it with you. You've got to have some level of adjustment. You've got to have some level of change. You've got to have your own spin on things. I felt too often Bobby Slowick was just calling plays that were photocopied from the Kyle Shanahan playbook. Like, you can't spend good portions of games not getting the ball to Nico Collins. You can't go out there and treat Dalton Schultz like he's George Kittle. Like, there have just been big stretches of time where it's like, yeah, okay, that's kind of trying to run the 49ers thing without having what the 49ers got. I mean, look, the 49ers had, when Shanahan's there, when Bobby's there, and when they were rolling on offense, like, they had a lot of offensive talent. And so that's the biggest thing is you got to, and the Texans needed to look out for this in the coaching process and in the coordinator process and the hiring process. You got to be more than photocopying the plays and teaching them to the players. You've got to be able to adapt. You've got to be able to hide weaknesses. You've got to be able to accentuate strengths. You've got to be able to adjust on the fly as defenses attack you, and you've got to be able to evolve. Bobby Slowick felt very much like the guy from last year, this year. It's part of the reason that he got fired. So you've got to be able to evolve and change and be fluid in the way that you approach offense, because your team's going to change. Your ability to operate things is going to change, and the ability to do things is going to change. And I felt like Bobby Slowick was sometimes incapable of managing that change or was against that change as well. So Chewy says, I'm excited to see what Caley does. Is he going to hit the ground running, start making changes? Are we going to see guys getting cut, staff getting fired? Let's freaking go. Yeah, I mean, look, he's got to put together a staff now. Obviously, when you're going through this process, when you're going through this job, you're going to have names in mind. Hey, if I get hired, I can bring this guy. If I get hired, I can bring that guy. Like, that's definitely something that they've got to have as they go through the process. And then, the Texans can probably make some recommendations. Hey, we'd like for you to keep this guy if you want to. If not, we understand. Like, that's all hashed out, I'm sure, not only in the interview process, but also in the negotiation with the offensive coordinator. Because as important as this offensive coordinator is, DeMeco Ryans still has final call. If DeMeco Ryans wanted Gerard Johnson to stick around and made that very clear, then that's his call. And the offensive coordinator doesn't get to move on from Gerard Johnson. Maybe he has to stay as the quarterback's coach or the pass game coordinator. I don't believe that's something that DeMeco Ryans would do, but you got to have a staff in place or an idea of a staff in place and go try to find those guys when you're going through this process. So I would think he's going to be getting going pretty quick. As far as players, again, that's part of the interview process. Who fits, who doesn't? I can make it work with this guy. I can't make it work with that guy. For Nick Caley, he's got to get in there and ask Nick Caserio, what's our cap situation? Like, can I go out there and get this guy if he's a free agent? Can I trade for that guy if he's available? Do I have to operate with Titus Howard at left guard, or can I do something else? Like, that's part of the interview process as well, finding out about what is required from the job so that you can better intimate how well you would do the job. So Uriel Garza says, okay, got our OC. Now, who should Texans go for in free agency on offense? Well, I feel like you should take a look and see if there are any Rams free agents on offense that make sense for the Texans. And I'm not saying, hey, just go get the guy because he's familiar with the offense, he's familiar with the coach is familiar with him. Like, I want a guy that can actually help you from that standpoint. I want a guy that can be a useful piece for the team. And I think initially about Demarcus Robinson. Demarcus Robinson has been an on-again, off-again wide receiver for the Rams and has had some moments where it's looked like he's got a little juice to him. He's a veteran. He's played a lot of football. He's played a lot of football while Nick Caley was there. And so Demarcus Robinson, as a free agent coming off of 500 yards and 7 touchdowns, 31 years old, like, that's a veteran that you could use in the wide receiver room. You're going to need a multitude of players in the wide receiver room and on offense to fill in for guys that you're going to get rid of or guys that aren't going to come back this year. Like Robert Woods, you can probably move on from Robert Woods. Shaq Mason, you move on from Shaq Mason. So Demarcus Robinson's the first name for me. Experience with the Rams, has played a lot of football, played in Kansas City for a long time, had a little quickie with Baltimore, but past 2 seasons, almost 900 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. Like, if that guy's your 3rd, 4th wide receiver, you can make things work. So that's Demarcus Robinson is my first one that I think of coming from the Rams that he could bring over, that he's familiar with. And then the rest of free agency, the rest of offense, draft, and things like that, that'll all come. But you're going to need a wide receiver in free agency for this wide receiver room. And I'd like a guy who's got a little bit of experience and still has a little bit of juice left to his game. All right, let's see here. Raul says, better pick up some O-linemen from the Browns. Yeah, if Joel Bitonio or what's the guy's name? Is it Wyatt? His name escapes me right now. If one of the guards from the Browns becomes a free agent, certainly. Texans for Life just says Cooper Kupp. Look, if Cooper Kupp is not working out for the Rams and they move on from him, or, I think financially it's a little hard to trade for Cooper Kupp, but if you want to get a guy that's still got a little bit left in him and knows the McVay style of offense in and out, you can do a lot worse than Cooper Kupp. I mean, this past season ended up playing in 12 games, had 67 catches and 100 targets for 710 yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, he's not ever going to be 2021 Cooper Kupp again, but could he be a slot guy that knows the offense, can help you out? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Raul says, please, I don't want to hear Shaq Mason's name after they foolishly put him in the divisional game. Yeah, that was a curious choice. And Raul, maybe we're only talking about Shaq Mason in a sense and in a situation where they're moving on from Shaq Mason. Maybe that is when we're talking about Shaq Mason and we're bringing up his name. So moving on from Shaq Mason is the only time you hear Shaq Mason. I didn't say Shaq Mason a whole bunch just on purpose. That was just to demonstrate we could be talking about moving on from Shaq Mason. So, wide receiver isn't the biggest need, to be honest. Yeah, but it's a need. Like you have to address all the symptoms of the offense not performing well last year. And part of it was you didn't have anybody after Nico Collins for a good portion of the season. And now you don't have a couple of those guys. Tank Dell's probably not going to play in 2025. If he does, it's late in the year. And Stefon Diggs is a free agent. So you've got to go out there and find playmakers at the wide receiver position to help Nico Collins. Yes, you also need offensive linemen. Yes, you also need a backup at running back. Yes, you also need new tight ends for this offense. There's more symptoms to the offense not being good last year than just one thing. So biggest need, okay, they're all needs. They're all needs. HDAV Traveler says, I'm sure everybody wants out of Cleveland. Yeah, including Myles Garrett, apparently. And before anybody asks, no, the Texans shouldn't trade for Myles Garrett. Ruderick's only warning here. We're not super chat shaming here. Okay. Trade for Kyle Pitts. No, thank you. Dump Schultz, too expensive, and Shaq. I'm in favor of that. So Jim, 1 out of 3 ain't bad. 333 gets you in the Hall of Fame. Kai back to Nick Caley. Was he the best choice? I believed him to be the best choice. I wanted younger, forward-thinking, experience in multiple offenses, experience with Sean McVay, good coaching background. I believed him to be the best. Most people wanted somebody with a little bit more play calling experience, a little bit more of a resume with the headset. I certainly understand that. There weren't a lot of guys with play calling experience out there to be had as offensive coordinators. And the Raiders snatched up the one who's had more experience than anybody. They paid him $6 million. So, and the Texans seemingly maybe weren't ever in on Chip Kelly. I don't know. But if they were and the price tag was $6 million, good for them for not paying it. I don't know that $6 million for Chip Kelly is worth it. Hallam Monk asks, could he get the best out of Juice and Kenyon? Juice, maybe. Kenyon, I don't know. It feels like Kenyon Green probably needs a fresh start somewhere else. So giving him that opportunity is probably the way the Texans should go. So I'd say fresh start for Kenyon Green. Maybe out of Juice. Look, the biggest thing for me is when they get these offensive linemen in here, there's going to be some competition. There's got to be some competition with the there'll be some competition with the offensive line. I mean, look, Laramie, lock him in at his spot and probably Blake Fisher, but those interior, I mean, make it tough for those guys to ultimately end up with the job. Sumo LR, how do you think Caley will affect the tight end room, free agency, draft, trade? I mean, I would like for the Texans to sort of focus heavily on offense in the same vein that they focused heavily on defense last year. I mean, think about what they did defensively last year with the spending on Daniil Hunter in free agency, Azeez Al-Shire in free agency, Danico Autry in free agency. Jeff Okudah was supposed to be better. They spent some money on him. He was supposed to be better, but Tim Settle, Mario Edwards, Foley Fatukasi, I mean, on and on and on. They spent a lot on defense. 2 of their first 3 draft picks, defenders. So, yeah, they added Stefon Diggs, and they got their offensive line back healthy, and they added Joe Mixon. But I'd like to see a little bit of an offensive offseason, and that's where Caley, that's part of the process. It's part of the reason you hire him. He aligns with how you want to operate things, and if you want to run the ball more, do we need to get another running back? Do we need to change out some of these offensive linemen? If you want to have a little bit more of more wide receivers out there, well, you got to go get wide receivers. So he'll have a significant say and affect things a very good amount there throughout free agency and the draft. Is Caley better than Chip Kelly? I mean, the experience factor, nobody was going to beat Chip Kelly's experience factor. I like Nick Caley for this position, this spot, more than I liked Chip Kelly for this. I also didn't think that Chip Kelly was leaving college, but I also didn't know $6 million was on the table. Yeah, that's Gavo. Gavo? We're going to draft the next Puka. That'd be nice, right? What if they had a Puka Nacua, like a late-round pick to turn into a big-time steal? That'd be great. I'm down for that. You want to draft the next Puka Nacua? Be my guest. Definitely going to take a late wide receiver swing after you see it work in LA. Why wouldn't you take a late wide receiver swing just about every year with one of those draft picks? About to have some great protection for CJ. We already have the key guys. Dominic McAdams says, yeah, I think you probably need to swap out a guy or two. So maybe they change that out and get that protection that CJ Stroud needs. Are we giving up on Hutch and Mechie, or was it Slowick's fault? Well, you can't bet on them. You can't bet that Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie are going to be key contributors for this team. You bring in competition for them via free agency. You bring in competition for them via the draft, and then you sort it out in July and August when training camp gets here. I wouldn't say that you need to get rid of this or do that, but they can't just be automatically the 5 and 6 or the 4 and the 5 for this team. They've got to be pushed and they've got to win their spot. Wide receiver depth is slim to none, so we got to beef it up on our wide receiver, certainly. Ruderix says, I'm sensitive. You can say pretty much whatever you want in the super chats. Don't agree with you, but hey, thank you for the super chat. Do you think Nick Caley wants Penn State tight end Tyler Warren? I think every coach wants Penn State tight end Tyler Warren. I think everybody would love to have Tyler Warren on their team. Probably the only team that don't want him is the Raiders. They got Brock Bowers. But I think everybody would want a shot at Tyler Warren. Need more speed at receiver? Yeah, certainly. Ryan says, era of gooder vibes. We'll get the stickers printed. Print the stickers. It's going to get a damn it Bobby sticker, but he's gone. He's gone. Chucky Dog says, if Caley can fix the run game, the rest falls into place. Wide receivers get more open. O-line pass protects better, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, look, and they're going to throw the ball. They're going to throw the ball. You got CJ Stroud. You got Nico Collins. You should throw the football. They're going to have to pass block well. They're going to have to get more out of the tight end position. But Nick Caley hopefully is that guy, and hopefully he's bringing with him some really fun and intriguing coaches that can help out with some of that as well. Just taking a quick swing here through Twitter to make sure nobody got hired. Well, this is interesting. Aaron Wilson's reporting, not expected to be a lot of change with the offensive staff, even with the external hire of Nick Caley as new offensive coordinator, per sources. Well, that's intriguing. If that's the case, then they're basically telling you Bobby was the problem. Texans' biggest need, an O-line coach. David with the super chat. Myles Garrett from Browns to Texans. Come on. No. That costs you multiple first-round picks. He's got to need to get a new contract. You got to pay Will Anderson soon. You got to pay Derek Stingley still. You got to pay CJ Stroud soon. It doesn't fit. It's fun, but it doesn't fit. Gustavo, shit, boys, I called it in the last stream. Gustavo, you're on it, man. You're on it. Appreciate the super chat. And yeah, there was the Chip Kelly stream last night. You said, hey, they get this done. Yeah, they did. They did. Will you update us on other coach positions? I'm definitely curious. O-line coach becomes, certainly. Extra SNL episode tonight. SNL, 4 o'clock. Landry Locker, myself, Cody, Stoots. It won't change. We'll see you there, 4 o'clock. How's Houston's salary cap looking going in the season? Needs some work. And I have to make some changes, some adjustments, get rid of some guys, but needs some work. Noah says Zabel time. He's talking about Gray Zabel, the North Dakota State University offensive lineman. Gray Zabel. Let's see here. A couple more comments, then I'm going to get ready for SNL. Cup incoming. Wouldn't mind it. Let's get into this Aaron Wilson tweet here. Let's pull that up. Give Aaron some love here. Now, Aaron was leaning towards Gerard Johnson. He thought that was going to be the move. He was leaning towards Gerard Johnson. So now he didn't report it and say it like this is going to be the case, but Aaron Wilson reporting, not expected to be a lot of offensive staff changes, even with the external hire Nick Caley as new offensive coordinator per sources. And we mentioned the relationship with Cole Popovich. We mentioned maybe the desire to keep Gerard Johnson on because he has a good relationship with CJ Stroud. Ben McDaniels has survived 4 or 5 different coaches at this point, and obviously Caley knows Ben's brother, Josh McDaniels. So we'll see. You don't have to make a ton of changes. You can make some small changes and make some big waves. We'll see what ultimately happens with that staff. Again, if you hired a guy and told him he has to keep the staff, that's a bad way to approach it. If you hire a guy and he wants to keep the staff, be my guest. How does this hiring affect Tegan Quintiriano's legacy? Hopefully it ends it. Jay, hopefully it ends it. I don't want to see Tegan Quintiriano anymore. I don't think the Texans want to see Tegan Quintiriano out there anymore. So appreciate you for the super chat there, Jay. Let's see. Couple more. James says Caley, if he uses the McVay system, should help CJ with the robust passing scheme. Mixon could also see an uptick, more screen passes, better run design. Bingo, bango, bongo on that, James. Tyler Warren or Gunnar Helm. So it's Penn State tight end Tyler Warren or Texas tight end Gunnar Helm. Well, they're going to have a shot at Gunnar Helm. I don't believe they're going to have a shot at Tyler Warren. Let's see here. Can we trade Tunsil and or Howard? I think you could. Be expensive to do. I think it's less expensive to trade Titus than to cut him, but who like Tunsil, yes. Who's replacing him? Who's going to be the left tackle? Like the replacement is harder to do. Titus, who wants him? What are you getting? EV says, no fat coaches stays alive. No fat coaches does stay alive unless they bring in a fat offensive line coach. But no fat coaches does stay alive. CJ has to approve of this, right? I would think he would like it. Nick Caley coached in the Rams system. CJ's mentioned how much he likes the Rams offense, offshoots of the Rams offense like Minnesota, and he likes Matt Stafford. So, all right, let's get caught up at the top. And a couple more comments. Stoots is all over this hire. Good job, Stoots. Yeah, no little ball, I guess. This was the guy. This was the guy I thought they should hire. This is the guy that they ultimately decided was a good hire, and it allows them to keep some of the things in place, change things that didn't work. He's a young, innovative mind, hopefully, and there you go. If Penn State tight end Tyler Warren's there at 25 when the Texans pick, I see the Colts pulling a trade for him. I mean, you just draft him. Don't trade. Brevin Jordan coming back as a W. People forget that. Yeah, if he's back healthy and can contribute, that's a big positive. It's a big positive. Corey asks, who does he bring in? Any ideas, QB coach? I mean, look, I think there's a chance Gerard Johnson stays. I think there's a chance that Ben McDaniel stays. I would think that Zach Cromer, the assistant offensive line coach for the Rams, is at least a consideration. Keeping Gerard Johnson and giving him the quarterback coach again, or maybe making a pass game coordinator is a consideration, I'm assuming. So we'll see. Any worry that Caley's like Slowick, teams figure out the McVay way and Caley brings in experience he can't adjust? Certainly a concern. Certainly a concern. Part of the process is to make sure you find a guy that isn't going to get caught and is going to be able to evolve and stay a step ahead of defenses. It's part of the process. Hopefully you find that guy. I am not the reason for the hire. Tim Wardley. So you're the reason for the hire. Then they listen. I am not the reason for the hire. No. Ruderich asks, why do you think we struggle to get the top candidate like Chip Kelly? Well, to me, they got the top candidate. Nick Caley was the top candidate. Chip Kelly ended up leaving college. He ended up getting triple his salary, double the highest paid offensive coordinator salary. And I don't know that Chip Kelly was the exact right fit for what the Texans have now offensively and what they want to have. So he was never really a consideration for me initially because I didn't think he was going to leave. But Nick Caley, he was the top guy for me, so I believe they did get the top guy. Fat O-line coach, Bob Wiley. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is Bob still coaching? I don't think Bob's even coaching anymore. As much as a Tunsil trade probably be welcomed amongst the fan base, harder to replace him than I think. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to replace Landry Tunsil if you get rid of him. Hard to replace Landry Tunsil if you get rid of him. Cody, who'd you want as O-line coach? Zach Cromer, the assistant O-line coach in L.A. Dalton Schultz on thin ice. Yeah, unfortunately, the contract's going to keep Dalton here this year. After that, though, you think they should try to get Diggs? No, thank you. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy is Cody Stoots? I'd give it a 9.1. And if they get Zach Cromer, I'll make it a 10. Billy Bob, 10. 10. So, okay. SNL at 4 o'clock today. Myself, Landry Locker, right here on YouTube. You don't want to miss out on that. Go watch Landry's video on Nick Caley. You're going to get his thoughts on that, and then you'll get us as the combo at SNL at 4 o'clock, so you don't want to miss out on that right here on YouTube. We end the live stream the same way each and every time. This is my hope for you. This is my charge for you as well. I want you to eat good. I want you to sleep good. I want you to be good. We'll talk Texans again soon, which is 4 o'clock today for SNL. Thanks for watching, everybody.